I would like to say, first of all, we have the conference motto, which is defining the next decade of action. And at the same time, we are starting with the session Vision 2030. And you may ask yourself, okay, 2030 is not 10 years, so what do we do? But we thought this conference is actually trying to identify action points that we have to take now, and that, but that may only be bearing upon us 10 years from now, 20 years from now, maybe later. But we need to start thinking about things that are coming to us and having long-term plans towards those developments and anticipating those developments. So the Vision 2030 is actually a joint effort, and I'm going to introduce the two speakers who are behind this effort in a minute. Running over a year, trying to identify a vision for forests, action points for forests that start now. Actually, it's an action plan for 2025 even, which is halfway through, but we still have some time. And we are also having this conference, and we looked at it as being halfway between Baku COP and Belém COP, so it's COP 29 and COP 30 for climate change, and that it would be a good stepping stone for taking stock and also define what we need to do next. And so that's what this session is going to be about. It's going to be, I think, very exciting and very informative for all of us, and you'll see how this helps us shaping our agenda for the next months, days, months, weeks, days, weeks, months, and years to come. I would like to introduce my two colleagues, Hermine Kleiman from WWF. Please come join me on the podium here. She is head of policy, global forest practice in WWF. And then Anna Reinhardsson, who is consultant at Climate Focus, so one of the organization behind the Climate Vision compilation, and WWF is the other one. And I would also like to say, and I think somewhere should be a QR code. There will be questions and answers later through Slido.com, so you can go online by photographing this QR code and enter your questions or comments there, and we'll try to respond to them in due course of the session. Okay. In Baku, at the COP in Baku, I brought something up that I called it the 3F: forests, finance, and fairness. And I thought this is maybe also a nice motto to encapsulate what the vision is about, but also what the next decade of action should be about. Forests first. Forests, and Sata just said it, so forests are not just carbon stores for climate. So forests are much more. Forests are the basis for biodiversity. Forests are the basis for livelihoods. Forests provide us with a lot of goods, and forests, a lot of goods that we know, and also a lot of goods that we don't normally think about. Amazonian rainforests generate rain that comes down in southern US and in northern Argentina and Sao Paulo state, and makes agriculture possible there. So if we lose forests, we have remote effects that we probably not even thinking about right now. And that's why we should develop a holistic view on forests. Many people say, we know enough, we just need to act. And that's true, we know a lot, but we very often find out that we don't know enough yet for specific questions, in specific contexts, and in view of refining what we do in forest action. And so there will still be a future for research and for engagement on creating evidence that people need to make the right decisions. it's a little, if you say we know enough, we don't need science, we can move forward. It's a little bit like telling a company like maybe Volkswagen or Toyota, you know, you found out how to build a car in 1930. So just get rid of your engineering department and go on building the same car for the next 150 years. That's not very smart. And that's not what these people are doing. And so we shouldn't be thinking that we can go forward with the knowledge that we have amassed so far. There's always more that we need to know in order to really make smart decisions on what we do on forests. So that's the first F. Finance. This was supposed to be a tennis ball. It looks a bit prickly, but this is the size of sustainable forest finance right now. $6 billion. As forest finance, you think you know it already. This is the size of the unsustainable forest finance in the world. How much bigger is this big one than this one? Can you guess? Anybody? I'll guess it, please. Oh yeah, thanks. 200. Okay, one start. 200, more, less? 1,000? You nailed it. There are 1,000 of these small balls fitting into this big ball, and basically this is Judith's sitting ball. So she's sitting on 6 trillions of unsustainable forests every day, forest finance every day, and she doesn't know it. But so we need to get this here, and you can see it is hard. It will not be immediate. It will take a long time, but we need to start. We need to start now, and so that's where forest finance needs to go. I leave the unsustainable forest here. Take the sustainable one with me. Thank you, Judith. And thank you for, no, take this. Thank you for sitting on unsustainable forest finance and keep it down. So, but it's not about size only. It's also about transparency. It's about what needs to be done in order for fund flows to go sustainably and transparently and accountably from the donors to the recipients. And the funds have to get to where they make the difference. And that's the hard part. It's not redirecting funds. It's how to run those funds on the ground where we make a difference. And finally, and that takes me to fairness, where people on the ground are actually working on having forests, keeping forests standing. That's where the action needs to get, and where very often we see not much funding arriving. And people, indigenous peoples, local communities, women are not part of the decisions, and that's where we need to change. It's participation and fairness is all about funding, of course, money, receiving the right amount of funding, but it's also about dignity. And I think dignity is what matters to most people. When you don't see your dignity being respected, then you turn away. You turn away and you don't want to participate anymore. So we need to take that very serious. It's not an add-on. It's something central to the forest action. And I'm terribly over time. I'm sorry. So I want to just close here and say this is the point where we need to start now, anytime, and we need to define the points of action. But we have enough to get started, and we have what we have is from the forest vision. So I'm going to invite now Hermine to give us her view on the Forest Vision 2030. Please, Hermine.
Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you very much, Chris. And I like the 3 Fs. And I actually like it's raining in Germany because it had been so dry and our poor German forests are suffering a lot. So we should actually embrace and appreciate the rain and do a bit of a rain dance here, right? So my name is Hermine Kleinmein. I'm the head of policy at WWF's International Forest Practice. And I'm very honored that we have been invited to open these 2 days Global Landscape Forum here in Bonn with a focus on forests and defining the next decade of action. And I'm also a bit intimidated by the amount of people here and also online. So I really appreciate you all here. So my colleague Anna Reinersen from Climate Focus and I, we play a bit of a good cop, bad cop game here. So I will start with the sobering facts and highlighting critical global political opportunities for forests in 2025, while my colleague Anna from Climate Focus will deliver the solution-oriented part, the 2025 priorities for government as defined by the CSO community just recently. We will also integrate a word cloud, and you have the barcode here. So I would like to ask you all with your phones and use the barcode, because we will integrate a word cloud on the questions of what are drivers of positive change for forests in your country, and then we will end with the Q&A. Right, so I'm in charge of the slides, right? Perfect, perfect. So I'm actually already run through the agenda. So these are the figures of the launched 2024 Forest Declaration Assessment, and they are alarming. The world is off track to meet the target to halt and reverse forest loss by 2030, as agreed upon by 145 leaders in Glasgow at the COP26 in 2021. With 6.37 million hectares of deforestation in 2023, we are over 45% of where we should be following a linear path to end deforestation by 2030. If deforestation was a country, it would be the 4th largest emitter after US, China, India, with 3.8 billion metric tons of CO2. Agricultural expansion, mining, logging, and fires are the main drivers of deforestation. But we also need to talk about 3 other concerning issues here. First, forest degradation. The total area of forest affected by degradation is immense. The areas degraded are 10 times the area that is deforested. Second, conversion of other ecosystems due to agricultural expansion. It's not only forests, but it's also other ecosystems. Examples of large grasslands conversion fronts exist on the American continent, with the North American Great Plains experiencing nearly 13 million hectares of natural vegetation loss from 2012 to 21, and the Pampas in South America losing approximately 5.5 million hectares in the same period. But most importantly, and thirdly, escalating threats to environmental defenders. The 2024 Forest Declaration Assessment highlights a concerning rise in violence against environmental and land defenders. Land grabbing, often linked to illegal deforestation, is associated with serious human rights abuses, including threats, criminalization, and even killings of those who protect forests in indigenous territories. So, and to underline the urgency, scientists are warning that we are facing the 6th mass extinction, and WWF's Living Planet report makes it clear why. The report reveals a staggering 73% average decline in monitored populations of mammals, birds, amphibians, reptiles, and fish between 1970 and 2020. This decline underscores the severe impact of human activities on global biodiversity. And most significant declines are observed in Latin America and the Caribbean with 95%, Africa 76%, Asia Pacific 60% of decline, and freshwater ecosystems globally declined 85%. And the reasons for this decline are, well, first and foremost, habitat destruction. Our demand for land, for agriculture, for infrastructure, for industry is devouring the very spaces that wildlife depends on to survive. Deforestation continues to erase biodiversity hotspots, especially in the tropics. Then there is climate change. an accelerant to extinction. Rising temperatures, droughts, floods, and fires are transforming ecosystems faster than species can adapt or migrate. Many are being pushed past the limits of survival, and we are facing overexploitation, overfishing, poaching, unsustainable logging, depleting species and ecosystems well beyond their ability to recover. And to that impact, and to add to that, the impact of pollution and the spread of invasive species, and the result is a perfect storm of pressures on nature. In addition, we are also dangerously close to reach the Amazon tipping point, a critical threshold beyond which the Amazon rainforest could irreversibly shift from a lush carbon-rich ecosystem into a dry savanna-like landscape with catastrophic consequences for people, climate, and biodiversity. Scientists estimate that the Amazon tipping point could be triggered if 20 to 25% of the forest is lost. Alarmingly, about 17 to 18% has already been deforested, and degradation from fires, droughts, and fragmentation adds even more stress. A tipping point scenario would also impact millions of people as they depend on the Amazon. Over 47 million people live in the Amazon, including more than 2 million indigenous peoples and 400 indigenous groups. A collapse would mean more heat waves, crop failures, water shortages, and health risks for people across the continent and below and beyond. So now, the good thing. We have 2025, which is a milestone year for action on nature and climate. We have a huge opportunity in 2025 with the UNFCCC COP presidency in Brazil and the ongoing updating of national biodiversity strategies, the NBSUPs, and enhancement of national climate plans, the NDCs. Why? At COP28 in the United Arab Emirates, the first global stocktake, a big climate checkup that tells us where we are globally to stay below the critical threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius had been conducted, and a crucial decision adopted. This decision made clear that one of the key solutions to address the global climate crisis is to better integrate nature into national climate strategies, the NDCs, in line with the global biodiversity framework. What is outstanding, though, is that the decision recognizes the importance to halt and reverse deforestation and forest degradation by 2030 and the need to scale up funding. Why is this outstanding? The global stocktake decision is a global mandate to take nationally determined climate action, NDCs, at national level to halt and reverse forest loss by 2030. This is so important because the previous round of NDCs are failing forests. According to a study which WWF Climate Focus and the Trillion Trees program published last year, less than 50% of forest-rich countries have a forest emission target in their NDC. Only 4% have included measures to address deforestation and conversion in agricultural production and supply chains. And only 2% have a target related to primary forests. So there is a lot of homework still to be done in NDCs, and now is the time. It is therefore important that this missed opportunity to better include forest targets and measures in NDCs is taken up, especially by forest-rich countries, in line with the recommendations of the global stocktakes, as it is depicted here on the slide. The Brazilian COP presidency is championing public and private forest actions, both formally in the negotiations and under the action agenda of the presidency. Deforestation and conversion-free supply chains must be at center stage of this agenda. Forest nations that embed ambitious, measurable, and equitable forest targets in their NDCs stand to benefit from stronger climate outcomes, increased international support, and long-term sustainability. And before I'm handing over to my colleague Anna to introduce the 2025 actions, I would like to pause and take a look at the word cloud in Slido, what you, the participants here in the room and online, have identified as drivers of positive change for your forest in your country or region. Is the Slido up? Restoration, which is also going to be a big focus for the Brazilian presidency. Very nice. Commodities regulation, yes, absolutely. This is the biggest driver of deforestation. Finance goes without saying, also stipulated by the global stocktake. Local communities, yes, we have evidence that deforestation is much lower in indigenous peoples' territories. Sustainable trade, absolutely, also part of our priority action agenda. Agroforestry, yes, we need to bring agriculture and forestry more closely together and to go hand in hand and benefit mutually from one another. Indigenous people's right, absolutely. Tenure security, also, again, we have evidence. The better governed and the secure the tenure is, the less deforestation. Responsible sourcing, absolutely, also part of our agenda. Good. I think I would leave it here and would like to invite my colleague Anna Reinerson, who is consultant at Climate Focus, to the stage, who is going to present the 2025 priority actions for government. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. It's lovely to be here, and thank you, Hermina, for the introduction. And it's so great to see all of those themes coming up on the word cloud. And as Hermina said, it really does reflect what we've developed through our 2030 Global Forest Vision. So we can go ahead and have the slides up just after the Slido. But as Hermina said, I'm a consultant at Climate Focus. Climate Focus is the coordinator and convener of the Forest Declaration Assessment, which is a civil society-led process to hold leaders accountable on their forest commitments. And today I want to introduce the 2030 Global Forest Vision, Priority Actions for Governments in 2025. So this document was created in response to what this moment demands, as Hermina mentioned, which is urgency and clarity and direction. So it spotlights what's most needed through 8 priority actions in 2025 and of course beyond, all focused on what governments can and must do now in order to reach 2030 forest goals. And it was also developed through months of multi-stakeholder engagement, consultations, direct meetings, written feedback. And today I'd like to present a high-level overview of each of them. So let's jump in. So for priority action 1, oh, excellent. So we begin by urging leaders to reaffirm forest goals on both an international and national level. So we can't have forest goals fade into the background, and we need to put them back at the top of the global agenda if we're going to act on them. As Hermina mentioned, COP30 is a massive platform where governments have the chance to signal their commitment to forest goals. But it's not just that. We also have the G20 summit in November, at which leaders should highlight the importance of forest in the summit outcomes. And they also have an opportunity to demonstrate how they're implementing the high-level principles on the bioeconomy that they previously agreed to in 2024. On a national level, as Hermina mentioned, this is a big year for climate and biodiversity strategies. These documents can signal a country's direction and its willingness to align domestic policies with global forest goals. For those countries who have yet to update their NDCs, for instance, they should ensure that their updated plans reflect the Glasgow Leaders Declaration and language on deforestation and degradation as listed in the global stocktake. But of course, ambition alone won't get us to where we need to go. What we really need is implementation. And so we also urge governments, especially those with strategies already in place, to develop inclusive national roadmaps with clear timelines, strong indicators, and very transparent monitoring, and really just delivering on those strategies finally. Next, we focus on trade. So commodity production, as Hermina mentioned, drives the majority of deforestation and ecosystem conversion worldwide. So if we don't tackle trade, we're not going to meet forest goals. International partnerships can be important mechanisms for promoting legal deforestation and conversion-free trade. And as of 2026, the EUDR will require that forest risk commodities traded in the EU are free from deforestation and forest degradation and produced in accordance with local laws. And bilateral and multilateral partnerships are really important here, as is acknowledged explicitly within the EUDR articles. Not only do countries need to build bilateral and multilateral partnerships around sustainable trade, but they need to embed enforceable forest protections into trade agreements. And overall, importing countries urgently need to raise the bar for legal deforestation and conversion-free trade. Next, as both Chris and Hermina mentioned, finance is a critical lever for meeting forest goals. Of course, achieving forest goals will take serious investment, far more than we're currently seeing. And it's long been the missing piece in reaching 2030 forest goals. One major opportunity in 2025 is the TFFF, the Tropical Forest Financing Facility. Donor governments here should engage with and support the TFFF by making long-term loans of sovereign sponsors. On the other hand, tropical forest countries should seek to join the TFFF, of course, acknowledging that their country-specific strategies and tailored approaches are required to reach low or zero deforestation. And all countries need to strive to find a balance between making the TFFF a simple and accessible and low-risk mechanism while upholding high environmental integrity. To turn all of this into results, we also need countries to translate their jurisdictional REDD strategies into tangible outcomes. They can do this with strong consultation processes, land tenure clarity, and systems that uphold the Cancun safeguards and the Warsaw framework. Which brings us to action 4. So the lands and territories of Indigenous people, Afro-descendant people, and local communities play a crucial role in climate mitigation and adaptation. Lands where community rights are recognized tend to have more forest cover, richer biodiversity, and higher rates of carbon storage than other lands. But the reality is that the lands managed by these groups, their land rights are continually underfunded and under-recognized. So in 2025, we need to see serious momentum on securing land rights for these groups. In order to do this, countries need to back a new 5-year pledge and make sure at least 30% of at least $3 billion over the next 5 years is directed directly to Indigenous and local community organizations in order to secure their land rights. On a national level, forest countries also need to scale their domestic efforts to secure land rights, including by setting time-bound national targets. One way they can do this is joining the FCLP's call to action to make ambitious public commitments around rights recognition. And of course, critically, governments must respect self-determination of these groups, not just in rhetoric, but on the ground. They need to promote community-based conservation through implementation of CBD Article 8J and implementing the Baku Work Plan from the UNFCCC. Fifth on our agenda here is all about supervisory expectations. So deforestation, forest degradation, and other ecosystem conversion poses serious financial risks that can impact businesses and economies all over the world. So governments and financial supervisors must mandate and ensure that forest-related risks are sufficiently assessed and managed and mitigated by financial institutions. But neither financial regulators, nor supervisors, nor financial institutions have yet made sufficient progress on this front. So that's where this action comes in. So first, regulators should set clear, time-bound expectations for financial institutions, ensure that they've mandated nature transition plans, as well as ensure that there's comprehensive environmental due diligence, and that central banks are also assessing their portfolios themselves and leading by example and aligning their portfolios with forest positive outcomes. We come to action 6, which is all around subsidies. It is extremely hard to overstate the impact that harmful subsidies have on deforestation, degradation, and ecosystem conversion. Each year, hundreds of billions of dollars go towards agricultural and land use practices that drive these harmful land use processes, and they also often leave smallholders behind. So what we need to do is flip that script. And what this means is phasing out harmful subsidies, reinvesting in sustainable alternatives, and making sure that that transition is just, especially for smallholders and rural communities who are often left behind. So first, governments must review national subsidies, identify the ones that are harming forests. This is already in line with what many countries have agreed to in Target 18 of the Global Biodiversity Framework. They must then repurpose those subsidies, backed by solid data and capacity building and inclusive planning, of course, and also creating safety nets for small-scale farmers and communities. This could include technical support, sustainable credit access, and payments for ecosystem services. Our next priority action for governments has to do with governance. Of course, governance is a very broad topic here, and it's impossible to create a set of actions that will be applicable for all national contexts, but we still can't overlook this lever of change. Because strong legal frameworks, law enforcement, and public participation are really the foundation of sustainable land use. But really, in too many places, we're seeing the opposite. But luckily, what we have seen is it's possible that when governance and enforcement of forest laws improves, it really does help drive real change on the ground. So in 2025, governments need to start by strengthening their legal frameworks to match their international forest commitments, and include customary systems of law where they exist within these frameworks. They also need to fund law enforcement agencies long-term. This includes everything from courts to investigators to anti-corruption bodies. And as always, they need to make transparency the norm. We need public access to land use policies, contracts, and revenues. And governments must also ensure fair and effective land use planning and allocation in line with Targets 1 and Targets 2 of the Global Biodiversity Framework. This is our final priority action that we have for governments, and it has to do with addressing the vicious cycle of debt and increasing fiscal flexibility in multilateral development finance. Global South countries possess immense natural capital that is essential for climate mitigation and adaptation and biodiversity goals. The environmental services provided by forests and other key ecosystems in these countries are assets, and they should be valued as such in their approaches to debt management. At the same time, the reality is that many of these countries are forced to spend substantial portions of their budget repaying sovereign debt, limiting the remaining investments that could be made in people and the planet. Without debt restructuring that accounts for the value of all countries' natural capital, the global community risks falling short on biodiversity targets and forest protection goals. So here's what we need to do in 2025 and beyond. Multilateral development banks need to address sovereign debt for nature-rich countries and make it conditional on meeting ecosystem protection goals. This could look like debt restructuring or cancellation. Multilateral development banks, along with international financial institutions, should also assign value to countries' natural capital and incorporate them in assets in countries' debt management and sustainability frameworks. And finally, international financial institutions should work to reduce the impacts of lending in sectors linked to deforestation. We need to increase available finance long-term and ensure increased fiscal flexibility for countries in the Global South. So there we go. That's the 8 priority actions developed through a year-long consultation process with civil society organizations. Each one is critical on their own, but of course, together they provide an agenda for governments moving forward in 2025. I really appreciate your attention. I know that's a lot, and we're excited to hear from you now. We have a few moments for question and answer, and we'll get into that before we close. Thank you.
So the floor is, sorry, the floor is open for comments, remarks, also online. Yeah, already some questions coming up. Yeah, you want to?
Excellent. Yes. Okay. So I'll just start with the first one, and maybe I can pose this to either of you, Hermina or Chris. Can you please speak more on the suggestions for subsidy reform? That's really an essential one here. Would either of you like to take that up?
Yeah, I can I can do this. So, I mean, as Anna has said earlier, subsidies are driving deforestation. And there is a World Bank study which had been launched, I guess, last year, which confirmed that. So it's around 2 million hectares of deforestation are associated with harmful agricultural subsidies. And WWF has also done a report with unique land use, which we have launched last year, which we have really examined and assessed the link, the direct causality between deforestation and subsidies, which is not so easy to establish, I must say, but it's not impossible if you have data from central banks on loans and then you overlap them with deforestation data and hotspots, and then you can get a pretty clear picture, I would say. And now with the target 18 of the Global Biodiversity Framework, we have an opportunity to address this and also take a closer link into agriculture subsidies and deforestation, and also reform and repurpose these in an equitable manner. And we have also developed a repurposing framework for that. And I'm very happy to sort of like give you the link to the report. I think it will also be posted on the website, but it's a very critical topic. And without reforming subsidies, we will very, very likely lose the battle to reduce deforestation.
Excellent, thank you. I see a next question up here is, could you provide some examples of ways to ensure that the EUDR will be enforced? Chris, would you be able to speak to this one?
Am I on? Yeah. Probably just to add to this, I think it's a very ambitious undertaking, but it is a necessary undertaking. So I think ambition needs to become the new norm here, because if we will not be able to halt deforestation by 2030, if we do not, apply the ambition needed and get solutions on the table, because the EUDR can actually spur innovation, and we have solutions. There are solutions in some with some commodities that can be showcased, should be scaled up. And I think in the context of the EUDR, what is critical is support from the international community. So now we need to set up partnerships, which have been also one of the priority asked for government. We need to have like some new funding streams coming in to help traceability to the farm level, because if we can establish this traceability to the farm level, we can also detect human rights abuses that are associated with production of certain agricultural products or commodities. So that's a great appeal to ambition, actually. It can be done, and we know how.
Who wants to take that? Yeah, I think we see a lot of disruptions. Currently, it's hard to say where these tariffs are going. They're going up, they're going down, and suspended, they're being imposed. So it creates a lot of uncertainty, and of course, it creates also uncertainty in investing into anything that is sustainable, because also there's an attempt to expand US policies on all other companies that make business with the US and so on. So where this is currently heading is hard to say. I'm sure it's going to have an impact. But maybe it's also an opportunity for all those countries not, dealing amongst themselves without going through the US or through the US to actually strengthen their relationships on this and on trade and make sure that barriers are being removed in those instances.
Thank you. I just see one question here also that I'd love to cover. It's, did you have the chance to show or discuss the 8 priority actions with governments and decision makers? And the answer is yes, we have. So in our open consultations, we had multiple government representatives join and give their feedback to us directly. But there was also, one of the instigators of creating the 8 priority actions was with the FCLP, who reached out to us to see if we could help, bridge the gap and provide some tangible actions and milestones for 2025 and beyond. So I do really think this will be a powerful tool. And not to mention the Forest Declaration Assessment is a civil society-led organization or effort, I should say. And if you go to the website to forestdeclaration.org/vision, you'll see the organizations that have endorsed this vision. And many of them have their own, connections, advocacy connections within governments. And so, it's honestly kind of probably hard to track all of the ways that this will be able to impact decision makers. But we're really proud of all of the engagement that we've had.
Yeah, just adding on and finalizing, as I see time is up, is that we are also going to work on a follow-up for non-state actors. So what can non-state actors do in 2025 to contribute to the 2030 vision and the 2030 agenda of halting and reversing forest loss? And I think we have come to the end of our session, and I'll give final words to Chris.
And more needs to be done, obviously, but at least nobody can say we don't know what to do. So let's get into action. Thank you for presenting this, and thanks for being here, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks.